The world is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, and in that quiet there is a sound that many forget to notice. It is the sound of stillness. The gentle pause between breaths, the soft sigh that comes when no one is watching, the weight of silence that fills the spaces between moments. Have you ever noticed it? That quiet that lingers long after the laughter fades, long after the voices have gone? It can feel empty at first. It can feel heavy. But it is not emptiness. It is a kind of presence. It is a space that waits. It is a place where the heart begins to listen to itself. When we are surrounded by noise, even gentle words can feel sharp. Even the softest comment can sting if it presses against a part of us that is tender. And in those moments, silence becomes a shield. Not a wall built from anger, not a mask of pride, but a gentle covering that lets us breathe. Sometimes we do not know how loud our own thoughts are until the world around us quiets. Then, in the hush, we hear the stirrings of our own mind. We notice the quick flicker of frustration, the small tremor of fear, the hidden longing that is easy to overlook. Silence gives these feelings a home. It lets them rise quietly, like smoke curling from a small flame, without anyone judging, without anyone demanding. It is strange how silence can feel both comforting and uncomfortable at the same time. It holds you, but it also exposes you. When everything stops, even for a moment, the heart becomes visible to itself. There is no one to distract you, no one to blame, no one to argue with. And yet, that very stillness can make you shift in your seat, as if sensing that you are finally alone with your own thoughts. Have you ever felt that? That sudden awareness that everything you have hidden, everything you have ignored, is quietly waiting to be noticed? It can make the chest ache, a soft, pressing ache that is neither cruel nor cruelly kind. It simply exists. And in that existence, there is clarity. The beauty of silence is not that it is empty. The beauty is that it is patient. It does not rush. It does not demand that you answer its questions quickly. It waits for you to arrive at your own understanding. It is not a test. It is an invitation. What do you carry within you that has no voice? What thoughts have been tucked away quietly because speaking them feels too large or too fragile? And as the quiet grows, you may begin to notice how small some things are, how much energy has been spent chasing echoes, how much has been given to things that do not deserve it. Silence reminds us that we have a choice. It reminds us that even in stillness, we are not powerless. Sometimes in silence, the world seems to breathe with you. There is a rhythm that you did not hear before, a gentle pulse that runs beneath every moment. It moves slowly, deliberately, without expectation or judgment. And in that rhythm, you begin to feel something you have long forgotten. It is not excitement. It is not joy, not in the way the world often shows it. It is the simple, quiet awareness that you exist, that your thoughts, your heart, your small tremors of feeling are real, that they matter even if they are never spoken aloud. The first time you truly meet this kind of silence, it may feel unfamiliar. You may feel the urge to fill it, to speak, to move, to make it go away. But if you remain still, if you let it sit beside you like an old friend, you may notice that the silence itself is alive. It carries its own lessons. It carries a kind of gentle wisdom that asks no questions and demands no answers. It teaches you how to be present with yourself. It shows you how to watch your thoughts rise and fall like waves without needing to chase them. It teaches patience with the quietest, simplest parts of your own being. And in that quiet, there is a first taste of strength, not a loud strength, not a strength that others can see, not one that needs approval. It is a quiet strength that comes from knowing that you are here, that you are aware, that you can witness your own heart without fear. It is a strength that does not shout, but that hums softly beneath every pulse of breath. You carry it quietly, but it is steady. It is real. And in the soft unfolding of silence, you begin to sense that there is something more to come, something beyond the noise, something that waits patiently in the spaces between the moments. So you sit and you breathe and you listen. You let the quiet enter your bones, your chest, your mind, and slowly, almost without noticing, you begin to see. You see that silence is not absence. It is presence. It is not weakness. It is a form of strength. And it is here, always, if only we will sit long enough to hear it. The first sound you hear in that stillness is your own. And that is where everything begins. There is a stirring that comes from deep within, one that often goes unnoticed until it cannot be ignored. It begins as a small flutter, almost like a shadow brushing against the heart. At first, it is easy to dismiss, easy to tell yourself that it will pass. But the more you sit with it, the more it grows, not in anger, not in loudness, but in presence. It is the quiet unrest that lives inside every thought you try to ignore. Have you felt it? That subtle tension that lingers when something in the world feels off, when something in yourself feels unsettled. It is the stirring within, and it asks to be noticed. Sometimes the stirring comes as frustration, a sharp edge that pricks the chest, a small fire that rises when they push too hard, when they speak without care, when they do not see what you see. And yet, it is not only directed outward. Often, it is the echo of your own unspoken feelings, the disappointment in yourself for thinking you should feel otherwise. You may notice your thoughts moving quickly, trying to make sense of what cannot be made simple. You may feel the urge to speak, to act, to react, and yet in the stillness you realize that action is not always needed, not yet. There is a strange intimacy in observing these stirrings. To watch them without immediately responding is to learn something about yourself that words cannot carry. Have you ever sat quietly and noticed the small tremors of your own heart? The fleeting impatience, the soft disappointment, the longing that cannot be named? They come quietly at first, like footsteps on a distant floor, barely heard but undeniable. And if you allow them to pass through without judgment, you begin to see the patterns of your own mind. You begin to understand the weight of your own emotions and the space they occupy. The stirring can feel uncomfortable because it holds a mirror to the self. It reflects not only what is outside, but what is inside. The moments when you wish you could be different, the small resentments you carry, the quiet hopes you hide even from yourself. These feelings do not ask for answers. They do not demand resolution. They simply are. And in their presence there is a kind of gentle honesty that is rare in the noisy world. There is a chance to be with yourself fully, to feel without needing to change, to observe without needing to fix. Sometimes stirring is paired with longing. You notice it in the breath that comes too fast, in the pulse that rises unexpectedly, in the mind that wanders to places you have not visited in a long time. It is the soft ache for understanding, for clarity, for connection. Not from anyone else, but from within. And in this ache, there is a quiet lesson. You learn that feelings, even the ones that unsettle you, are part of the natural rhythm of being alive. They are not wrong, they are not weakness. They are simply reminders that the heart has depth, and that it carries more than the eyes can see. There is also a strange beauty in the stirring because it teaches patience. To feel without reaction, to sit with unrest without giving it shape, to let your thoughts rise and fall like small waves upon a calm lake. It is a practice that few notice, and yet it is profound. It is not about control, and it is not about suppression. It is about witnessing. It is about learning that your own inner life has its own quiet rhythm, one that does not need approval or acknowledgement to exist. In the still observation of your own stirrings, a kind of understanding begins to form, and sometimes the stirring becomes almost a companion. You realize that it is not an enemy to be fought or a shadow to be chased away. It is a teacher softly guiding you to notice what is real, what is tender, what is alive inside you. You learn that emotions are not storms to escape from, but rivers to observe, slow and deep. Have you noticed how much strength there is in simply noticing? How much clarity comes from quietly watching the movements of your own heart without judgment, without need for change? In this quiet space, you may begin to see that the unrest is not a burden but a beginning. It is the gentle insistence of your own presence, reminding you that you are aware, that you are alive, that you are capable of feeling fully and deeply. It asks nothing from the world and asks little from yourself. It simply exists, and through its existence it shows you the first steps of understanding. And so you breathe, and you sit, and you watch. You notice the stirring rise and fall like a soft wind over still water. You do not chase it, you do not name it, you allow it to be, and in that allowance, you begin to meet yourself truly and quietly for the first time in a long time. You begin to see that the heart, when given space, has its own voice, its own wisdom, and its own gentle rhythm. The stirring within is not a call to action, it is a call to presence, and it is enough to simply listen. There are times when it feels as though the world has turned against the quiet parts of yourself. You sit and you feel the gentle stirrings within, and yet they do not see. They do not understand. Their words reach you, sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, but always missing the mark. It is a peculiar kind of loneliness to be surrounded by presence and still feel unseen. Have you noticed how often patience is mistaken for weakness, how restraint is read as absence or emptiness? And yet, it is not absence. It is a careful watching, a slow breathing, a choice to hold space for yourself even when they push against it. Sometimes they test boundaries without realizing it. Their actions brush against the tender edges of your heart, and you feel the urge to respond. But there is a quiet strength in holding back. It is not indifference. It is not silence out of fear. It is a measured pause, a gentle decision to allow the storm to pass without being swept away. You may feel their misunderstanding like a weight pressing on your chest, but even in that pressure, you notice something remarkable. You notice that the calm within you does not falter. You notice that the heart can remain steady, even when others do not see its strength. Being misunderstood is a strange companion. It follows you silently, weaving into the corners of thought, lingering in moments when the world feels too loud. And yet, there is a lesson hidden in its quiet persistence. To be unseen, to be misread, is to confront yourself without distraction. You must sit with your own intentions, observe your own truth, and measure your own heart against the shifting tides of expectation. There is a subtle clarity that comes from this solitude. Have you ever felt it? That soft, unwavering awareness that you are present, that your thoughts and feelings are valid even if no one else recognizes them. They may not know what you carry or why you hold yourself as you do. Their assumptions brush past the reality of your inner life. They see only what is convenient, only what fits their own story, and in that seeing, your restraint may appear strange, but it is not strangeness, it is self-respect. It is a quiet dignity that does not bend to misunderstanding. You may feel a small ache, a longing to be understood, and that is natural. Yet there is a profound lesson in letting it be. In the silence of being misread, you begin to understand that your sense of worth does not depend on recognition. It does not depend on agreement. It grows quietly, in the small acts of holding your own heart tenderly, even when the world does not. And there is a rhythm to it, a slow pulse that only you can hear. Every time they push, every time they fail to see, every time they misunderstand, you have a choice. You may react, and the stirrings may sweep you away. Or you may watch, breathing steadily, and let the waves pass without disturbance. The first is noise, the second is presence. The first demands attention from others, the second honors attention from yourself. In the quiet watching, you begin to understand that being misread is not a measure of failure. It is a chance to hold steady, to observe without haste, and to trust the quiet compass of your own heart. You may notice in these moments how much energy is spent trying to correct the world, how often the heart wishes to explain, to justify, to push against T is misunderstood. And yet, the more you sit with stillness, the more you realize that explanation is not always necessary. Understanding is not always given, and that is not a reflection on your own truth. Your truth does not need a witness to exist. Your peace does not depend on their recognition. In this gentle knowing, there is a liberation that is quiet, almost imperceptible, but deeply enduring. And sometimes, in the heart of misunderstanding, you feel the faintest whisper of gratitude, not for the misreading itself, but for the lesson it brings. You learn that the world's perception is never yours to carry. You learn that the strength of the heart is measured not by applause or acknowledgement, but by its own quiet constancy. You learn that being unseen does not mean being small, and that restraint is not absence, but presence in its most subtle form. So you sit. You breathe. You notice how they may misjudge you, how their words may not align with your reality, and yet you remain. You feel the pulse of your own heart, steady and unwavering, and in that quiet observation there is a growing certainty. The world may not see, they may not understand, but you do. You hold your own truth gently, and it is enough. You are enough. And in that stillness you feel the first threads of something deeper taking root, a calm, quiet power that no misunderstanding can touch. There comes a moment, often unexpected, when you turn your gaze inward and see yourself as clearly as you have ever seen anyone else. It is not a glance, not a fleeting recognition, but a slow, careful observation, as if you are tracing the lines of your own mind with gentle fingers. Have you ever noticed the weight of your own thoughts when you finally stop running from them? When the world's noise fades and the stirrings within rise to the surface, there is a kind of quiet revelation waiting. It is neither sudden nor dramatic. It simply is, like the first light spilling softly over a still lake. In that quiet space, you begin to see the patterns of your own heart. The impulses that rise quickly, like sparks catching in dry grass, the desires that push and pull without reason, the fears that linger like shadows in corners you rarely visit. To watch them is not always comfortable. Some thoughts are familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. Some feelings feel like old friends, but they carry secrets you have never fully acknowledged. And yet, there is a gentle beauty in this seeing. To recognize your own heart without judgment is to meet yourself fully, quietly, and with patience. Have you noticed how often we act before we understand? How often we are swept along by the currents of emotion, thinking that movement itself is necessary. In the quiet reflection of this moment, you see that observation is itself a kind of action. Watching the self, allowing the stirrings to rise and fall, noticing the pulse of thought and feeling, is a practice of presence. It teaches patience. It teaches the subtle strength of restraint. You do not need to react immediately. You do not need to define every feeling with words or actions. You simply need to see, and in seeing there is a growing awareness of choice. You begin to notice the space between impulse and action, the gentle pause that opens like a doorway. In that pause, you can feel the heart deciding not out of fear or pride, but out of understanding. What is worth responding to? What can be left untouched? What requires only quiet observation, and what deserves the soft, steady energy of your attention? These questions are not answered quickly. They do not demand answers from anyone else. They are answered slowly within the chambers of your own being, where clarity grows like a small, patient flame. Sometimes this reflection brings surprise. You notice how much of your life has been guided by reactions that were not fully yours. How many moments were spent responding to what they said, to what they did, to what they expected of you, rather than listening to the quiet wisdom within. And in this noticing, there is no shame. There is only understanding. There is only the soft recognition that the heart is capable of more than it has allowed itself to be. You are capable of observing without being carried away, of feeling without being overwhelmed, of knowing yourself without apology. There is a strange comfort in this kind of self-reflection. You may sit quietly and feel the small tremors of your own impulse. The lingering shadows of fear or anger, the hidden glimmers of hope or longing. And you notice how they move, how they rise and fall, how they pass through you without leaving anything behind if you let them. In this gentle watching, you discover that you are not the sum of your reactions, not the sum of their misunderstandings, not the sum of the stirrings that come uninvited. You are something quieter, something steadier, something that holds its own space with dignity. And as the quiet grows, there is a subtle shift. You begin to see that self-knowledge is not about perfection, and it is not about control. It is about presence. It is about allowing yourself to exist fully in the tender, restless, complex space that is uniquely yours. You begin to feel a soft respect for the self, a recognition that your thoughts, your emotions, your quiet stirrings are all worthy of attention and care. They are part of the same quiet river that runs beneath every moment, steady and patient and true. So you watch, and you breathe, and you notice. You let the heart speak softly in its own time, without expectation, without judgment. You begin to see the gentle power of understanding yourself, and in that seeing, there is a first glimmer of calm certainty, a quiet knowledge that whatever comes from the world, whatever misunderstanding, or unrest or testing, you carry within you a steady presence that does not waver. In this presence, the self begins to settle, and the quiet strength of K. Knowing becomes your companion, soft and enduring, like a light that does not flicker. There is a quiet power in choosing the unspoken, in holding your voice and your actions with gentle care, even when the world around you seems to demand otherwise. Have you ever felt that soft hesitation, that still pause before speaking when every part of you wants to respond, to explain, to defend, to strike back? In that moment, the choice is not about fear or restraint born of weakness. It is about dignity. It is about listening to the small, steady pulse within, the quiet compass that does not rush, that does not need to prove itself to anyone. Choosing silence over reaction is not always easy. The stirrings in your chest may grow, impatient and loud, pressing for release. Thoughts may rush like wind through the branches of a tree, each one demanding recognition. And yet when you pause, when you allow yourself to breathe and simply be present with your own heart, something remarkable happens. You notice that the world can wait. You notice that your inner life does not need to be dictated by the moment's provocation. You notice that power is often soft, and that strength does not need to announce itself. It is strange how much freedom comes from this quiet decision. When you do not react, you are no longer a prisoner of their words, of their actions, of their misunderstandings. You are free to move gently, to observe calmly, to hold the self intact. And in this freedom, there is a of dignity that cannot be taken away. You may sit quietly and feel the small swell of your own heart, aware of every urge to respond, every impulse to act, and you let them pass without needing to chase them. It is not emptiness. It is not absence. It is presence in its purest, softest form. Have you noticed how often the world mistakes the unspoken for weakness? They may push, test, or provoke, thinking that silence is an opening. And yet, the quiet heart knows otherwise. The heart that chooses to watch, to breathe, to remain calm, is not without power. It holds a space that cannot be disturbed by their impatience, a space that is steady, constant, and deeply rooted. In that space, the self begins to grow in ways that words could never express. You may feel misunderstood, perhaps even invisible, but within that gentle observation, your own truth remains untouched. There is a rhythm to this choice. The moment rises, as it always does, full of pressure and expectation. The impulse to react is like a wave that swells and threatens to break. And then you notice the space before the wave touches the shore. In that space, there is a calm, a quiet awareness that allows you to meet the moment without being swept away. You may let the wave pass, let the noise fade, and in the fading there is clarity. You notice the difference between what belongs to you and what belongs to them. You notice the power of simply being present and measured without haste or anger. And yet, this stillness is not cold. It is not a retreat. It is a gentle engagement with the world through the steady lens of your own heart. You begin to see that the unspoken carries its own message. It communicates more than words ever could. It shows patience, restraint, and quiet understanding. It is a language of presence that speaks softly but clearly to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And sometimes it speaks to yourself most of all, reminding you of the depth of your own inner strength. In the quiet choosing of stillness, you also notice how your thoughts unfold differently. Without the rush to react, without the need to push back, the mind becomes clearer, lighter, more observant. You see the patterns of behavior, the gentle lessons hidden in each moment, the truth behind what they say and do. And with that seeing, the heart learns a new rhythm, one that does not tremble at provocation, one that does not seek validation, one that rests in its own steady, quiet knowing. And so, you sit and breathe, aware of the stirrings, aware of the urges, and you let them rise and fall like soft waves over a calm sea. You notice that power is not always loud. You notice that strength is not always visible. You notice that the quiet choice, the unspoken word, the gentle presence of restraint can hold more weight than any shout, any argument, any immediate reaction. And in that quiet, there is a first taste of freedom, a first sense of dignity, a first recognition of the soft, enduring power that lives within you, waiting patiently, always. There is a quiet kind of power that grows slowly, almost unnoticed, like roots deep beneath the earth, steady and strong. It is not loud, and it does not demand attention. You may not even notice it at first, until one day you feel it in the way your chest settles, the way your mind does not race at every small disturbance, the way your heart remains calm even when the world presses close. Have you ever felt that stillness rise within you, subtle but unmistakable, carrying a weight that is not heavy but steady? It is the gentle strength that comes from patience, from restraint, from watching without reacting. The power is soft, yet it shapes everything. You begin to notice that you are no longer carried away by the stirrings that once pulled you quickly into words or actions. The impulses still rise, small flames flickering in the chest, but they no longer demand that you feed them. You observe them, and they pass, leaving you intact, whole, quietly strong. It is not the absence of feeling that makes this power, but the choice to meet feeling with presence, to allow it to exist without being swept into it. In that gentle control there is dignity, and in that dignity there is a kind of quiet authority that cannot be taken away. Have you noticed how this strength changes the world around you, even if subtly? They may still push, still provoke, still misunderstand. Their words may still reach you, sometimes sharp, times careless. And yet, the calm that lives inside you is like a river that flows beneath all noise, carrying you safely past each wave. You may feel them pressing against the edges of your patience, and that is natural. But the heart that has learned to watch and breathe does not falter. It does not need to defend itself at every turn because it has learned that its own presence is enough. There is a kind of wisdom in this quiet power, one that comes from knowing that not every battle requires a response. You see the patterns that once drew you into arguments, the moments when you gave energy to what could not be changed. And now, with gentle observation, you begin to choose differently. You do not act to prove yourself. You do not speak to make them understand. You move softly through the world, and the strength is not in motion, but in stillness, in awareness, in the quiet knowing that your heart is steady and your mind is clear. And sometimes you notice the small ways this power shows itself. It is in the steady breath that follows an insult or a slight. It is in the way your chest does not tighten, your hands do not tremble, your voice does not rise. It is in the simple, soft awareness that what they think, what they say, what they do cannot disturb the foundation you have built quietly within yourself. It is in this moment, sitting with your own heart, that you realize strength is often invisible, measured not by impact on others, but by the calm that lives with thee. N. There is also a gentle freedom in this awareness. You are no longer bound to reactions that do not serve you. You are no longer carried by impulses that do not belong to your own choice. You are free to observe, free to breathe, free to let the world move as it will while your inner life remains steady and undisturbed. And in this freedom there is a softness, a grace that cannot be demanded or taken. It is a quiet movement of the soul, unfolding slowly, like a tree growing toward the sun, unnoticed by many, but deeply rooted and enduring. This quiet power is also a teacher. It shows you patience with yourself, a gentle compassion for the stirrings that arise and pass. It teaches you to honor your own heart without haste, without judgment, without expectation. You notice how small the disturbances of the world appear when measured against the calm that lives within. You begin to trust the rhythm of your own being, the subtle pulse that carries you through moments of misunderstanding, of tension, of quiet challenge. And in that trust, you feel a deep, steady peace. So you sit and you breathe and you notice the strength that rises quietly within you. It is not loud. It does not need applause or recognition. It simply is. And in its presence, you feel a soft certainty that you can meet whatever comes without losing yourself. You feel the gentle power of a heart that has learned to wait, to watch, to breathe, and to remain whole. And in that stillness, you begin to sense something timeless, something enduring, a quiet authority that moves softly, patiently, invisibly, yet deeply within every pulse of your being. There is a subtle shift that happens when the quiet strength of restraint settles deep within you. It is not sudden, not dramatic, but it moves like a soft current beneath the surface, shaping everything without force. You may notice it first in the way your heart no longer rises at every provocation, in the way your chest remains calm when they push, when they misjudge, when the world presses against you. It is a quiet transformation, almost imperceptible at first, yet profound in its unfolding. Have you felt such a change when the self begins to hold its own space, steady and unshaken, despite everything around it? The transformation is not in the world around you, for they may still test, still misunderstand, still speak without care. It is within. You begin to notice how differently you meet the same old moments. The stirrings that once demanded action now rise and fall like gentle waves, and you do not follow them blindly. You have learned to pause, to watch, to breathe, to remain whole. In that watching, you feel a growing sense of self-respect, a quiet dignity that does not need recognition, a steady authority that does not announce itself. And as this quiet authority grows, you notice that relationships and interactions begin to shift in their own way. They may not understand your calm, they may not see the patience in your restraint, Yet their energy changes around you. When you no longer feed the friction, when you do not rise to their provocations, the tension softens. The world no longer dictates the rhythm of your heart. You do not need to chase understanding or demand acknowledgement. You simply move through each moment with measured presence, and in that presence, the small unseen threads of change begin to weave themselves. There is a gentle clarity that comes with this growth. You see patterns that once escaped you, the ways in which responses were automatic, the ways in which the heart gave away its power in search of approval or recognition. And now, you notice how choice can live quietly in every moment. You begin to trust the subtle compass of your own awareness. You begin to know that patience is not absence, and that silence is not weakness but a form of quiet wisdom. It is the kind of understanding that asks nothing of the world yet carries everything of the self. Sometimes in this transformation you feel a soft relief, as though a weight that you did not realize you carried has lifted. You may notice that anger no longer lingers in the chest, that frustration does not twist the mind into knots. You feel the gentle release that comes when the heart no longer needs to prove itself, no longer needs to react to every disturbance. And in that release, there is a sense of space, a soft room within the self where understanding and calm can breathe freely. This growth also teach you about presence. You begin to see that being fully here, fully aware, without rushing to judgment or reaction, is a kind of mastery in itself. You watch the rise and fall of thoughts, the flicker of emotions, the quiet passing of impulses, and you remain steady. You see that your own inner life does not need constant adjustment to the world outside. You notice that the heart that remains centered is not fragile. It is patient. It is soft, it is strong, and in that patience, in that softness, in that strength, you feel a deeper sense of being, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the world begins to feel different. Not because it has changed, not because they have changed, but because you have changed. The quiet transformation within you ripples outward in subtle ways. The space you occupy feels steadier, more grounded. The tension that once pressed so closely is now met with calm observation. You begin to notice a new rhythm in life, one that flows gently, without force, without haste, without the need to react. So you sit, and you breathe, and you feel the transformation settling softly into your bones. You notice the small threads of patience, of self-respect, of quiet power that now run through every thought, every pulse, every breath. And in that noticing, there is a gentle joy, not loud, not celebrated, but deep and enduring. You begin to understand that growth is not always visible, that change is not always dramatic, and that the quiet self, held gently and observed tenderly, carries a kind of strength that shapes the world in ways too subtle for many to see, yet too real to be denied. At last there is a moment when the heart feels settled, as if a long journey has brought you home without a map. You sit quietly and notice the gentle rhythm of your own breath, the soft rise and fall of the chest, the pulse that carries you steadily through each passing moment. It is a quiet calm, one that does not shout or demand attention. It does not feel like triumph, nor does it feel like relief. It simply is. Have you ever felt a stillness like this, when the world and its disturbances no longer press so closely upon you, and the self rests softly within its own presence? In this stillness you begin to sense a deep understanding of what it means to hold yourself tenderly, without rush, without fear, without need for acknowledgement. You feel the soft certainty that whatever comes from outside cannot disturb the foundation you have built quietly within. There is a weight to this awareness. Not heavy, but steady. A gentle strength that carries itself silently through each breath, each thought, each quiet pulse of feeling. It is the kind of power that does not seek to impress, does not need recognition, does not demand the eyes of others. It simply is. And in this calm, You notice how far you have come without noticing the distance, the moments of unrest, the stirrings that once pulled you into reaction, the misunderstandings that once shook your chest. All of it has been met with quiet observation, with soft patience, with the gentle choice to remain present rather than swept away. You see now that strength is not measured by action or response, but by the ability to remain steady, by the courage to watch without haste, and by the patience to let life unfold around you while your own heart remains intact. There is a subtle joy in this realization, not a bright joy that demands to be seen, but a quiet satisfaction that rises like sunlight through a window, soft and steady, illuminating the edges of thought and feeling. You notice the small victories of the heart, the moments when you chose calm over reaction, silence over argument, presence over haste. You feel a tender respect for yourself, a recognition that the inner life you have cultivated, slowly and gently, is sufficient, whole, and deeply enduring. And sometimes, in this quiet, you think of them, the ones who tested, who pushed, who misunderstood. You may feel no anger now, no urge to correct, no need for explanation. You simply notice. You see them as part of the rhythm of life, necessary perhaps for lessons you could not have learned any other way. And in that noticing there is compassion, quiet and soft, for yourself and for them both. You understand that your peace does not depend on their understanding, and your strength does not need their acknowledgement. The still heart also teaches patience with time itself. You begin to see that growth is not loud or dramatic. It is measured in small shifts, in subtle choices, in quiet observation repeated again and again. The self that watches and breathes steadily has learned the soft, enduring lessons that the world cannot take away. And as you sit with this knowledge, you feel a gentle continuity, a sense that each moment of awareness, each small act of restraint, each quiet choice has brought you here, to this calm, to this soft authority, to this deep presence. You notice that the peace is not static. It does not demand perfection, nor does it insist on stillness without life. It is gentle, flexible, quiet, like a river moving slowly over stones, patient and enduring. You feel the heart expand slightly, not in excitement, not in pride, but in the quiet satisfaction of understanding its own rhythm. You see that the soft power within you has taken root and will remain subtle but unshakable, guiding each thought, each breath, each quiet step forward. And so you sit and breathe, noticing the calm that fills the spaces where unrest once lived. You feel the gentle strength of your own presence, steady and enduring, and you know that the world may continue as it always does, full of noise and testing and misunderstanding. Yet within you there is a sanctuary, soft and patient, resilient and true. It is not loud, it is not flashy, it does not need to be celebrated. It is simply the quiet knowing that you are here, whole and present, carrying a strength that no disturbance can touch, a peace that moves gently through every pulse of your being, eternal and unshaken.